My name is Renee Gallagher. I was 34 years old, a medical billing coordinator at a specialty clinic outside Kettering, Ohio, and I found out about the $19,840 on a Wednesday morning at 7:43 a.m. while my son was eating cereal at the kitchen table and I was trying to pull open the drawer that had been swollen in its frame all winter. The notice was on top of the mail stack. Joint account. Past due. My name listed second, the way it always was on things Daniel had opened, as though my presence in the arrangement was a courtesy detail rather than a legal fact. I stood there with the drawer half open and the notice in my hand, and Caleb said, without looking up from his bowl, "Mom, we're gonna be late." "I know," I told him. I put the notice in my work bag. I finished making his lunch. I drove him to school and went to work and sat at my desk for the first hour of the morning doing my job with the specific mechanical competence of someone whose mind is located somewhere else entirely. I had been with Daniel for 9 years, married for 6. We met when I was 25 and he was 27, at a work event neither of us had particularly wanted to attend, and for the first few years the marriage functioned the way I had understood marriages to function, imperfectly but in good faith, with two people more or less rowing in the same direction. Daniel worked in equipment leasing. He was good at his job in the way charming people often are, capable of making any room feel like it had been waiting for him specifically, capable of making any problem sound like something that would sort itself out if you just didn't panic. I had admired this about him for a long time before I understood that it was not a temperament. It was a strategy. We lived on Riverside Drive in a house we had bought 5 years earlier, a 3-bedroom with a yard Caleb used constantly, and a kitchen I had renovated in pieces over 3 years, one project at a time, on my own budget and my own schedule because Daniel's income had a way of being spoken for before it arrived. A credit card here, a payment plan there, the particular financial looseness of someone who has always assumed things will even out. They evened out because I made them even out. That was the arrangement, though it was never stated as one. Caleb was 10. He was the kind of child who noticed things quietly and stored them without comment. The kind who would sit in the back seat on a long drive and say nothing for 40 minutes and then ask a question that revealed he had been paying attention to everything. He had Daniel's face and my habits, which I considered most days a reasonable outcome. The girlfriend had existed in my peripheral awareness for somewhere between 8 months and a year. I did not know her name. I knew the shape of her presence. The evenings Daniel came home later than his calendar suggested, the way his phone had migrated from the counter to his pocket, the specific new quality of his silences. I had not confronted him because I was gathering information the way I gathered everything. Quietly, completely, without announcing what I was doing. He left on a Tuesday while I was at work. Caleb was at school. Daniel packed what he needed, left his key on the counter, and left a handwritten note on top of a printed bank statement. The note said he was sorry, that things had not worked out the way he had hoped, and that he wanted me to know the joint account had a balance he had not been able to address before leaving, but that he fully intended to take responsibility for it in time. In time. The statement showed $19,840 in revolving debt, accumulated over 14 months on an account I had co-signed when he said he needed the credit line for a work expense and that he would handle it himself. He had handled it by leaving. What I had built in that house over 6 years was not invisible. It was just unwitnessed. My income had covered the mortgage in the months Daniel's commission checks ran short, which happened more often in the last 2 years than in the 4 before them. When the furnace needed replacing, I scheduled the contractor, negotiated the price down by $400, and wrote the check from the account I kept in my name only. The one I had started before we married and never merged, a decision I had made without fully understanding why at the time. The household ran on a system I had built and maintained. The school calendar, the medical appointments, the utilities on autopay, the grocery rotation, the car maintenance schedule. I kept a spiral-bound ledger, a habit from my mother, who had kept one her entire adult life, where I logged every shared expense by category. Not obsessively. Just accurately. 4 years of accuracy, in blue ballpoint, in a ledger that sat on the second shelf of the kitchen cabinet above the microwave. Daniel had never opened it. I do not think he knew it existed. There were other things he did not track. The years I had filed our taxes because he kept losing the W-2 forms. The week I managed the insurance dispute when the clinic overbilled us by $2,300 and Daniel said to just pay it rather than fight it. I did not just pay it. I called, documented, appealed, and got the balance corrected. He thanked me without asking how. That was most of it, really, the thanking without asking how. What I had given Caleb was a version of stability that required constant maintenance to look effortless. The school pickups when Daniel had an evening event. The science fair project built across 3 weekends while Daniel was at a conference. The conversations about friendship and fairness and what you do when someone treats you like your feelings are an inconvenience. Conversations I had not planned but found myself having anyway, in the car at bedtime while I was making dinner and Caleb was doing homework at the counter. He was 10. He understood more than 10 should have to. There had been a period, about a year before Daniel left, when Caleb had started asking questions at bedtime that were not quite about what they seemed to be about. Whether people who made promises always had to keep them. Whether it was okay to be mad at someone you also loved. I had answered carefully, without editorializing, because he was 10 and those were his conclusions to reach on his own schedule. I do not know what he understood. I know what he did with it. He came home from school on the Monday after Daniel left and set his backpack down and asked if we were going to lose the house. I told him no. He asked if I was sure. I told him I was working on making sure. He nodded the way he nodded when the answer was incomplete, but he had decided to accept it anyway and went to wash his hands before dinner. That evening he sat at the counter while I made pasta and asked me, in the careful voice he used for careful subjects, whether Dad owed us money. It's complicated, I said. But he does, Caleb said. It was not a question. Yes, I said. He does. He was quiet for a moment, stirring his water glass with a fork. Okay, he said. And then, I'm going to help. You don't need to help, I told him. I know, he said. I want to. I let that sit. I did not tell him there was nothing he could do. I had learned by then that telling Caleb there was nothing he could do was rarely accurate. 3 days after Daniel left, Caleb came into the kitchen while I was reading the debt notice for the 4th time and sat down across from me and said, "Is it the money thing?" "It's a money thing," I said. "Is it bad?" "It's manageable," I told him. "I'm working on it." He nodded. He looked at the counter for a moment. Then he said, "I have $22 in my drawer if you need it." Something moved through the back of my throat. Not the urge to cry, not anything that soft. Something closer to the sensation of a seam holding under pressure it was not designed for. "Keep your $22, I said. "But thank you." He nodded again and went back to his room, and I sat with the notice and thought about what working on it was actually going to require. I called the bank the following morning. The representative confirmed what the notice said. Joint account. Both names equally liable. The balance had accrued over 14 months in charges that were, she said carefully, consistent with personal expenses rather than business ones. I thanked her and ended the call, and then I called Daniel. He picked up on the 3rd ring. There was music in the background, something low, and the particular acoustic quality of a space that was not a car and not an office. "Renee," he said. "I got the bank notice," I told him. "I know. I was going to call you about that." "You left me a note." "I left you an explanation," he said. "I know the timing wasn't." "The timing," I said. "You left on a Tuesday while our son was at school and left me a note on top of a bank statement for $20,000. $19,000, he said. "It's not." $19,840, I said. "Joint liability. My name is on it the same as yours." He was quiet for a moment. "I'm going to handle it." "I told you that." "When?" "When I'm settled. I just need a few months to." "Daniel." I kept my voice even. "You left. You are settled. You're somewhere with music playing right now and you've been there for 4 days. That's not fair." "Which part?" He didn't answer. "You said in the note you fully intended to take responsibility," I said. "I need to know what that means specifically." "It means I'm going to pay it," he said. "I'm not a deadbeat, Renee. I know you want to make me into one right now, but I'm not. I haven't called you anything. You're implying it. I'm asking you for a timeline, I said. That's the whole conversation. There was a pause. I heard something shift on his end, a chair maybe, or a door. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped slightly, the way it did when he was recalculating. I need you to be reasonable about this, he said. I am being reasonable, I told him. Reasonable is why I'm calling instead of filing. Another pause. Filing what? A letter from my attorney if it comes to that, I said. I'd rather it not come to that. Look. His voice shifted into the register I recognized, the one that sounded like patience but was actually the early stage of dismissal. I know you're upset. I know this isn't what you wanted. But you've always been able to handle things. That's who you are. You're going to be fine. Something tightened along my jaw. Not fury, not the urge to match his register. Something more like the physical sensation of watching a door close that you had been holding open for a very long time. You always handled everything, he said. I used to tell people that. I'd say Renee doesn't need anyone to take care of her. She just handles it. You said that, I replied. It's a compliment. You left me with $19,840 in debt and went to Springboro with someone else, I said. And you're telling me I should take it as a compliment that you expect me to handle it alone. You're being ungrateful, he said. I gave you 6 years. I gave this family everything I had. I did not respond to that. Renee. I heard you, I said. So we're good. I'll be in touch, I told him. I ended the call. The kitchen was quiet. The drawer was still half open, the wood swollen and catching in its frame. I pushed it shut and it stuck halfway and I left it there. Caleb was in the doorway in his socks. Was that Dad? He asked. Yes, I said. He looked at me for a moment. Are you okay? I'm working on it, I said. He nodded slowly. Then he said, It's okay, Mom. I took care of it. I looked at him. What does that mean? He looked at the floor. I found some stuff on your old phone. In the drawer. I thought it might help. Caleb. I kept my voice quiet. What did you do? I just sent an email, he said. To Dad's work. The HR lady. I looked her up. I stood very still. I used the screenshots, he said. The ones where Dad says the debt is his. From when you guys were fighting last year. I thought maybe if his work knew, he looked up. Was that bad? I called the lawyer first. I pulled the spiral ledger from the cabinet above the microwave and set it on the counter. I photographed every page. I created a folder on my desktop. I labeled it with the date. I printed the bank statement. I printed the note Daniel had left. I printed the text message thread, the one Caleb had found on my old phone, the one from 14 months ago where Daniel had written, in a moment of rare directness, The credit line is mine, I'll deal with it, just sign so we can move forward. I put everything in the folder. I placed the ledger on top of the stack. I sat for a moment with my hand on the cover of it, the cardboard slightly warped at the corner from when Caleb had spilled water on the counter 2 winters ago, the spiral binding still tight. I made Caleb's lunch for the next morning. I drove him to school. I went to work. I did my job. I waited. Daniel called on a Friday afternoon. 3 days after Caleb's email. What did you do? He said. Not a question. I'm going to need more context, I told him. HR called me in this morning. His voice had a quality I had not heard before. Tight, high at the edges, the voice of someone who has just discovered that the ground they were standing on was not where they thought it was. They got an email. With screenshots. Renee, those are private. They're text messages you sent me, I said. From a personal conversation. In which you acknowledged that the joint debt was yours, I said. In writing. With a timestamp. That was taken completely out of. Daniel. I kept my voice level. Your 10-year-old son found a way to document your own words and put them in front of the people who needed to see them. I didn't ask him to. He did it because he was trying to take care of me. That should tell you something. Silence. He was quiet long enough that I checked the screen to confirm the call was still connected. Renee. His voice had gone lower. The dismissal register was gone. What remained was something closer to the voice I had married, which was not, I understood now, the same thing as honesty. I know things got out of hand. I know I handled the leaving badly. I'm not going to pretend I didn't. That's not what this call is about, I said. Then what is it about? It's about the record, I said. You spent 14 months building one version of what happened. I spent 4 years building a different one. The difference is mine is written down. What record? He said. You mean that ledger? That's every expense, I said. Every month. Every time the mortgage came up short and I covered it from my account. Every time the utilities ran over and I adjusted. It's not my interpretation of what happened. It's what happened. He didn't answer immediately. You told me I was ungrateful, I said. You told me you gave this family everything you had. So let me tell you what I have. I reached into the folder, took out my phone, opened the photo album, and turned the screen toward no one. Just held it in my own hands, the ledger pages visible in the photographs, 4 years of entries in blue ink. I have the record. I kept it. It's all there. Every expense. Every month. I set the phone face down on the table. The attorney will contact you next week, I told him, about the debt attribution and about the cosigner release. I'd suggest you respond. He was quiet for a long moment. You've always had a plan, he said finally. Haven't you? I had a ledger, I told him. That's not the same thing as a plan. That's just paying attention. I ended the call. Caleb was at the kitchen table eating cereal, his spoon moving in slow circles, watching me with the calm, measuring attention of someone twice his age. Did it help? He asked. It helped, I said. He nodded and went back to his cereal. Good, he said. I thought it might. That was 11 months ago. The debt was attributed to Daniel through the cosigner release process. It took 4 months and 2 letters from my attorney and 1 brief, uncomfortable mediation session in a conference room in downtown Dayton, but it concluded the way documented evidence tends to conclude when one party has it and the other doesn't. The house on Riverside Drive is mine. The equity, $287,500 by the last appraisal, sits in a legal structure that my attorney helped me formalize in September. Caleb has his own room, his own yard, his own routines, and a father he sees every other weekend in Springboro under an arrangement that functions because I manage it carefully and without drama. In November, Daniel's mother sent me a text message. It said that she hoped I understood Daniel had made mistakes, but that she worried I was keeping Caleb from understanding his father's side of things, and that she hoped I would consider whether my approach was truly in Caleb's best interest, or whether I was, and here it was, being ungrateful for the family that had tried to include me. I read it once. I did not reply. I have not replied to any message from that number since. My work promoted me in October. I'm running the billing department now, for people reporting to me, a job that rewards the same skills I have always had: attention, accuracy, the willingness to keep a record when no one else thinks it matters. Caleb is 11. He is learning to cook. Last Saturday he made scrambled eggs entirely on his own and presented them with the specific pride of someone who has completed a significant engineering project, and I ate every bite and told him they were excellent, which they were. I fixed the kitchen drawer in August. It took 20 minutes and a hand planer and a YouTube video Caleb found for me. It opens clean now, every time without catching. On the shelf above the microwave, the spiral ledger sits where it has always sat. The entries stop the month Daniel left. I haven't opened it since the mediation. I don't need to. The record is the record. Not a wound to revisit, not a trophy, just 4 years of a woman paying attention to her own life, written down in blue ink, still there if anyone ever needed to know what actually happened. If you've been keeping your own record, the kind no one sees, the kind you've been telling yourself doesn't matter, I think it matters. I think it's the most important document in the house. Sometimes it just takes the right moment for someone else to see it too.